Hello, I wanted to share about the Great Schism of 1054, the split between Roman Catholic Christianity and Eastern Orthodox Christianity. So I wanted to have a quick discussion and talk about that and share about some of that history. So it was in 1054, 11th century Europe, when the Great Schism happens. And it's important to realize this is about 1,020 years after Jesus is crucified and his ministry on earth is handed to the apostles. And so this is about 1,000 years, just a little under, after the historic apostolic churches. And that's where in New Testament writing you might see Apostle Paul writing to the Galatians, the Corinthians living in Corinth, and so on and so forth. So this is after a few centuries of Rome accepting Christianity and eventually making it their religion, the state religion. So in 1054, there's a lot going on. So let's put into context what is happening in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is this large, massive empire. It's diverse. It's got Greeks, it's got some Gauls, it's got um, Byzantines. But the issue is the Roman Empire, at least the Western half, doesn't exactly exist. If you're a close student of history, you know the Roman Empire, or at least Rome, was sacked in 476 AD. It was destroyed for multiple times, but that final sacking was by the Ostrogoths. So Rome, or the Roman Empire, exists only in its eastern part. The western half still exists as much as Rome and Italy exist, the Ostrogoths exist, the Gauls exist, Latin exists, the Roman Catholic Church exists. But the empire, led by an emperor, a Roman emperor, does not exist. And later we have the progression of the Holy Roman Empire, but that's not here right now. So there's not really much of a Western Empire, but there is an Eastern one, and it was Greek. There was a Greek Eastern Roman Empire called the Byzantine Empire. So I want to first talk about someone quite relevant to the story of Rome and Christianity, and that would be Constantine First. So Constantine the First, Constantine the Great, was a pagan king, one of the last, who essentially on his deathbed turned to Christianity and softened to Christianity. And he was the first to accept and promote Christianity. So it says here it's 280 AD or 280 CE, where he was born, and he dies in 337 AD, and he takes office. I think he takes off. I think he's only emperor. It might say somewhere. Yes. Okay, emperor. He's from 324 to 337. So he's basically emperor for 13 years. Now, his mother is very significant to Christianity, and she has a lot of great contributions. But something to keep in mind is at this moment, when he is in this time starting to profess Christianity, the first two Christian kingdoms at the beginning of the fourth century, so it's like 300 AD to 305 AD, is when firstly the kingdom of Armenia and then the kingdom of Georgia in the Caucasus Mountains become Christian. So Christianity is catching on in the world. There are two Caucasian, as in the Caucasus countries bordering each other that are accepting Christianity, and now the Emperor of Rome is accepting Christianity. So it talks about, we can see here in this Britannica article of his, that he was Latin speaking, spent time in the eastern provinces, learned a little bit about Greek, and there's a lot to learn about his life, and he definitely is the first Roman recorded. But then we get on to Theodosius. Theodosius the First is the first Roman Empire emperor that wants Christianity to be the state religion. So he makes it that way. He's very devotedly Christian, not just converting later in life, but very devout. And from early on tries to make Rome a Christian nation. But here's the thing. A man named Diocletian, who was also an emperor, actually sees, so here it says here, he's mentioned even in this short biography of Constantine, Constantine the Greater, Constantine the First, that he was in the court of Diocletian. It says something, it mentions it. So Diocletian is another emperor, and he was emperor until 305 AD. So he made Eastern and Western Rome split, with the Western Roman Empire being led by Rome, which is now the capital of Italy, in modern day Italy. So Rome as the capital, and then the Eastern Roman Empire to be the capital in Constantinople, which would be modern day Istanbul, the capital of Turkey. An amazing city because not only is it Constantinople, it once was also Byzantium. It's an ancient city, the Byzant. That's where it gets the name Byzantine, Byzantium. It's the city of the Trojan War, which is also Troy, right? So very historic ancient city. Changed a lot of names a lot of time. Constantinople, Istanbul. But this city is very important towards Christian history, and it's a very important city because when it falls in 1453, there's a significant change in the world. It's when it falls that the Ottoman Empire is at its peak and is putting a lot of pressure on Europe, and that pressure contributes to Europe going and looking and exploring westward and expanding and eventually colonizing and imperializing the world. But it's also from this fighting of the Ottoman Empire and other Muslim empires where there's a lot of exchange of militaristic and scientific ideas. There's a lot of transfer. So I wanted to, before we end, just talk a little bit more and think a little bit more about what's happening that would cause this great schism in Christianity. Why in 1054 is there this great schism? We have so much going on before then, so much that will take place after then. After the Great Schism, there will be more schisms, such as Martin Luther in the Protestant Reformation, 1517. This is when the 95 Theses are nailed to the wall, nailed to the doors, and we know this is this is 5 centuries, almost 6 centuries, I should say, after Rome falling. So what is going on here? Well, the eastern half of the Roman Empire always spoke Greek. It was the Greek part of it. When Julius Caesar and Pompey have a huge civil war, this is when the Roman Republic turns into an empire led by an emperor shortly before Christ, just in the 50s BC. Pompey mostly controls the eastern part, the Greek part, while Caesar crossed the Rubicon and went to Rome. So there was always a separation between the East and the West. Linguistically, Western Rome stayed speaking Latin, and that transformed into modern day Spanish in Spain. Italy speaks Italian, right? Northern Africa, that was Western Europe. So there was a linguistic difference and a geographic separation between East and West. And there was a political separation under Diocletian. So eventually there is a religious separation. And a lot of other reasons for that schism are reasons of quarreling between heads of church and also differences in doctrine. Today, it's clear to see there are clear differences of doctrine among Eastern Orthodox doctrine and beliefs compared to Catholic beliefs. And one could talk about all types of things like what's in the biblical canon, certain beliefs on who to lead, and different thoughts on baptism. So today, a lot of fallout has been there between the difference between the Eastern and Western religions, Catholic Christianity, Eastern Orthodox. So to look more into the Great Schism, we could read a little more on it. But this is just a thing. This here is just talking about. This website is just talking about Diocletian separating Rome for administrative reasons. But the Great Schism, ultimately, I remember in my 10th grade world history AP class, my teacher, she told us that and it's true, one of the reasons they split was over bread, truly over bread. How to make the bread, what kind of bread. So we see here, this is National Geographic, and there's an article written on the Great Schism. And it does mention, and it is recorded, that unleavened bread being a sacrament of the communion was a point of contention. So, as well as other disputes of creeds. We know about the Nicene Creeds, which details the testaments to the faith of a Christian, believing in Trinity and believing in the resurrection. And that led to a great schism. Today, the two branches of Christianity remain distinct, which they do. And so, what does this mean? At that time, it meant that the patriarch in Rome and the patriarch in Constantinople are excommunicating each other. Cerularius. It had a lot of impact because not only was there all these other divisions between the historic Eastern and Western Roman Empire and its impact, but now there would even be a religious distinction. And to think about some of the things they're debating about, the whether or not unleavened or leavened bread was supposed to be used isn't detailed, but it's known that Jesus has the feast during the Passover, and one of the hallmarks of the Passover feast is it is followed by the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So for about a week, for about 10 days, I believe, after Pesach, Passover, everyone is eating unleavened bread to remember when the Jews were freed from Egypt and they were in such a rush to leave from slavery that they didn't have time to bake their bread. So the concept that it should be unleavened bread is fine and well, but there's nothing forbidding it from being leavened because it's not detailed. But I don't think dividing churches and excommunicating each other and separating off of belief is not, that doesn't seem to be something the scripture appears to support. And scripture seems to be more supporting, biblical scripture would seem to more support unity, not stumbling, not causing division and squabbling over trivial matters. So I'm glad I got to talk about the Great Schism of 1054. I hope this video is informative and interesting, and hopefully, if anyone was interested, we could talk more about some of the doctrinal differences, such as celibacy, whether or not basically pastors and priests and the clergy, can they get married? Can they have children? Can a married man become a priest? Does the Bible have anything to say about that? So we can talk about that, talk more and put more into context into the world history at the time. And yeah, and just discuss this. Thank you very much.